All right. Hi, everyone. Looks like people are filtering in, so I'll just give it maybe another minute.
Yeah, and I'll just say hello while you're doing that. So, hi, this is Eric Rice. Great to see everyone. Thanks so much, Aviv, for coming and doing this. I think this is going to be one of our best attended seminars we've had in quite some time. So, thank you for being willing to come and give such a talk that people are really excited to hear.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric, for inviting.
Yeah, and so why don't we go ahead and get started? So my name's Shadi Saba. I'm a PhD student here at the School of Social Work at USC, and I'm also a kind of social science student leader for the Center for AI and Society, which is a joint venture between the School of Social Work at USC and the Viterbi School of Engineering, where we're focused on using AI and computational methods to address some of society's biggest challenges. And so today we're really excited to for our seminar speaker today, and that is Dr. Aviv Landau. And Dr. Landau is the co-director of Safe Lab and a research assistant professor at UPenn's School of Social Policy and Practice. His research focuses on developing and implementing interdisciplinary computational and social work approaches. His main topics of interest are youth health disparities, ethical AI, and social media. And today he's going to present on ChatGPT and the age of ChatGPT, navigating challenges and opportunities. And so he's going to discuss and outline the challenges and opportunities that ChatGPT and other LLMs pose across bias, legality, ethics, data privacy, confidentiality, informed consent, academic misconduct, and talk about research implementing ChatGPT and social work research and advocacy. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Landau.
Thank you very much, Shadi, for introducing me. It's a pleasure to talk to you about this important issue. I may not have all the answers, but I hope this talk will raise questions and discussions around ChatGPT and AI implementation in social work research and practice. So here we go. So I'll introduce myself. Before I started this journey of academia, I was 8 years as a school social worker, working with immigrants and students at Haifa in Israel. And I worked with diverse groups of youth and understood from them the need for understanding the online world. I had a BSW, MSW, and a PhD, and currently I'm a research assistant professor at School of Policy and Practice, University of Pennsylvania, and I'm also the co-director of the Safe Lab, who I will introduce as well. So the Safe Lab is a research initiative focused on examining the ways in which marginalized youth navigate grief, trauma, and joy on and offline. We use computational approaches and social work thinking. Computational approaches such as natural language processing, data science. We work with health informatics, NLP pioneers, visual computer scientists, and so on, to think about social problems that impact the youth that we engage with. So as you can see, the Safe Lab was founded by Professor Desmond Padden, who is on the left of the screen. We have an associate director, Siva, who is next to me in the photo, and we have students and other faculties that are working with us. So before I talk about ChatGPT, I want to provide some context about what interests me and what led me to think about ChatGPT and research around social work. So my main focus currently in these days is around health equity. I work with health informatics and explore medical documentation, and think about social problems that are within communities and social problems that impact hospitals and primary care. Another subject that I work on is youth and social media and understanding the on and offline worlds of youth. Currently working on projects around concerning grief and social exclusion and so on. And another aspect of my work and my colleagues' work is thinking about how to implement social work thinking and developing AI tools or technological tools. We think about anti-racist strategies. We think about reflexivity in the implementation and development of AI. And this is how we started to think about ChatGPT and how that impacts or may impact social work. So we wrote a editorial, Desmond, Siva, and myself, and it's on Journal of the Society for Social Work and Research, and I'll introduce this paper and thought process that has led us to think about ChatGPT and the opportunities, but also the challenges that may have implementing it in our practice. So, as you probably know, AI has changed our society and is changing our society. Within AI, large language models such as ChatGPT are impacting how we as humans engage and communicate with one another in our online worlds and also in our offline worlds. As you can see in the right side, I asked ChatGPT today, how should I start to talk about ChatGPT ethics and social work? And this is the first 4 bullet points that it provided with me. First of all, if you don't know, ChatGPT is and I also asked, the second part of the slide is I asked ChatGPT, what is ChatGPT? And the answer is ChatGPT, or Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer, is a state-of-the-art language model for developing by OpenAI. It is part of the GPT series of models and is designed for NLP, understanding and generation. ChatGPT is trained on a large corpus of text from the internet and can generate human-like text in response to user input. So currently, there is around 4 types of ChatGPT. In academia, they've used for years now ChatGPT 2, and now every person has pretty much access to ChatGPT 3. So let's talk about the opportunities in our research. What I really am excited about, and this is also around my research, is how to develop interdisciplinary teams. And I think also your center, this is really important, because what happens a lot with interdisciplinary teams of social workers, physicians, data scientists, health informatics, computer scientists, is how to develop a language to work together. And bridging that is a challenge. And ChatGPT can help us think about new domains that involves interdisciplinary research. It could provide us insights at how to collaborate, and both from the challenges and opportunities. And it could also make us think about assumptions that we have and assumptions that our colleagues that may have from their perspective and disciplines. And for instance, it could help navigate from my work with informatics, what is child abuse and neglect? So from a computer science perspective, it could be one thing, but from a social work perspective, it could be another thing. And it could help us think it through. And ChatGPT has the options of providing content that is more readable and communicative. Another part of my research, I'm also a qualitative researcher, which is different than the traditional data scientist. And as first part of when I conduct research with colleagues is starting the research projects with qualitative interviews that can inform AI development. And what the opportunities I could imagine with using ChatGPT is helping us as researchers think about new themes, new ideas, could help us brainstorm and provide us with new perspectives. For instance, we could potentially put in transcriptions and ask to get main points. And we could check these main points and think about it. Maybe these are additional codes or themes that we haven't thought about while doing our initial analysis. It also can help us edit. And I'm sure a lot of you have been using ChatGPT to edit, but when we interview, there's transcriptions, we could look for keywords, we could look to change words that were miswritten in the transcriptions, could really help us out in the large data sets of content. And what else it could also help us? It could simplify complex theories and frameworks. So when I'm talking to my colleagues about thematic analysis, ChatGPT could help me navigate that process in a way that's more communicative and helpful. It could help us also when we're presenting projects and research. It could help us better present it to people that are not in academia, and it could help us share our knowledge to communities and across globally. We could generate new conversations. It could help us ask innovative questions by providing proof of concept. We could, usually right now when we start projects, we a lot of times work with ChatGPT and ask it questions and play around with it just to feel what are the nuances, what are the things that we know, what are the things that we may not know. It could help us with ideas and provide us with opportunities to do simulations that force us to challenge our assumptions around grief, around loss, around child abuse, and around other issues that interest us. It could also help us ask better questions and think about new questions. For instance, qualitative interviews or surveys, we could utilize ChatGPT to think about other open questions that we have missed, other ideas that we have not thought about. And it really is a tool of assistance. We could ask it to give us input about anti-racist and an anti-racist lens to help us identify language that may be racist and around medical documentation or welfare data. So for instance, if we're playing around with data that is welfare data, we could put it in and see if ChatGPT recognizes biases within this data. And that could raise a lot of questions around the data that we're using. Who is implementing that data? How are we using this data? Are there notions of racism within these data? And could provide us with other thoughts about, from a social work and justice lens, about how we're doing research. So eventually, algorithms like ChatGPT are themselves bureaucrats and leveraging existing institutional thinking to work efficiently. So I'm going to talk about the limitations a bit and think about, and this is something that we talk about a lot in the lab, is eventually AI developers mostly come from a a similar background and not diverse background. And the way data is used and what data is used comes from one angle. And we have to diversify these angles and provide deeper inputs about data and extend our data sets. So when we are thinking about addressing bias, we should expand diversity with the data set used to train LLMs. We need further representation of diverse perspectives and scholarship. And we should think about different languages, different, even in English, does ChatGPT only capture white English, or could it also capture Black American English, that has different nuances and dialect? Also, there's ethical and legal considerations. I mentioned before that we could put interviews and so on, but what happens if we don't have consent to use that? We don't know what's happening with the data. We don't know, once we input data in ChatGPT, what will happen. Will it be used in other studies? Is it de-identified, and so on? So that is something that we need to think about. And also, one other aspect of it, there could be a chance that the data we receive is biased. So we must check it out. We must understand what we're looking at, and we have to validate it. Data privacy and confidentially, and informed consent. How do we know we add personal data? What happens to it? So that's a question. We don't know. It's unclear right now what happens to personal data. So if I'm using medical data, can I use ChatGPT as a tool to look into the data? It's a question. Also, there's a main concern right now in academia. What happens with misconduct? What happens when we as scholars ask our students to review something, and we get this, and they all use ChatGPT, and we receive the same answer again and again. So it's a question how us as scholars, we have to level up our thought process of how we ask questions and what our aim is from the students. Also, AI at this point cannot replace context or reflexivity. So how do we know that the ChatGPT, if we're asking a question, has the context of the issue that we're asking? So for instance, we could ask ChatGPT about immigration, but it doesn't know the legal aspects from 2021, and can provide false assumptions about rights, human rights, and so on. So there isn't a thing about transparency when writing papers and academic work. I believe that we should. I don't think ChatGPT should be a co-author. I think I see it as an assistant. I see it as a personal helper and an academic RA, and that sort. But we should talk about it. We should acknowledge that we're using these LLMs in a way to help us with our research, and that will also, and I don't think it's a shame to do that. I think it's something that it's pretty straightforward, and in today's journals and other programs, it's pretty standard to see the usage of ChatGPT as an assistant for writing and thinking about research. Another thing is, like, we need to do fact checking. So if we get a we get information from ChatGPT, it's not necessarily right. There are known problems with citations and providing data or science that is not relevant. So for if you're a PhD student or a researcher, I think it's better off to verify the sources and think it through, and not say amen when you get an answer for ChatGPT. Let me see. Okay, another important aspect is, how do we make ChatGPT more inclusive? Currently the main option that we have is just ask ChatGPT and develop with our data scientists prompts that may include extended data sets that come from marginalized communities and scholars of color to add additional perspective, because we are concerned that it's not doing it that right now. And if we are thinking about ethics and social justice, we want much larger data sets and to include much more communities than what is currently included in the data sets that ChatGPT uses. So what's next? And I think this, like, for me, the important part of this talk, and the interesting part. So we have 3 questions that we raise, and I'm going to talk about some of the later on about some of the projects that I'm currently working on, thinking about. So how does ChatGPT affect the future of social work research? And that's a question. I'm a social worker. I did my BSW, MSW, PhD, as I mentioned, all in social work. Most of my colleagues do not engage with technology as we do. And it's a pity, because there is currently, when I was a school social worker, I was trained to work in communities with families and with youth. No one trained me to do my work online or get assistance online. And ChatGPT, from my perspective, can be a tool of assistance for in practice and and in research. Could ChatGPT aid social work science in reimagining research ethics? And that's a question also. Why? Because we're still working on thinking about ethics. We are still developing our ethical frameworks. We are still imagining how social work and technology and an ethical standard can work together. Can ChatGPT push researchers in social work and related disciplines to ask new, deeper, more refined questions centered on ethics, community, and anti-racist approaches? And I believe it can. We have to try. And I'm going to give you a few options, things that I'm working on right now. So, from my perspective, ChatGPT can aid social workers to provide resources to their clients. Meaning, right now, if I'm a community social worker in Philadelphia, ChatGPT can help me think about what resources and what institutions we have within the community that may be beneficial for this client and family. We could prepare families also to talk with social workers, navigate systems, and best advocate for themselves. Meaning, what am I thinking when I'm thinking about that? They're studying child abuse and neglect. There's over-reporting against Black families. And I think that tools like ChatGPT can help families advocate for their rights if they feel that they're mistreated, and understand the systems in a better way. So we could help, we could work with our clients and families to help for them to use ChatGPT as a resource for their advocacy. It could help social workers and other professionals translate hard to understand documents for clients, meaning what happens when a patient gets medical documents about end-of-life decisions, and that's a project that I'm working on. Can ChatGPT and similar AI tools, can they help us better translate the medical data to be understandable and communicative, especially when the people do not read medical documentation. It's hard to read. It's the jargon is pretty much for physicians, and these are issues that we're thinking about: reimagining health information, reimagining legal issues, thinking about working about migration, immigrants, Spanish speaking. How can we better translate the data that we have in a way that is understandable for them? Second. Okay. Social work scientists should consider advancing anti-racist social justice frameworks. Ethical guidelines are essential characteristics. We should develop guidelines that could help social work scientists to determine when and how to use AI tools such as ChatGPT. And this question, when, for me, it's maybe sometimes AI tools are not help. Maybe they cause more harm. These are questions that I ask myself a lot when developing tools to identify child abuse and neglect. What do I mean? And ChatGPT can help me think about these problems. What do I mean when by AI tools may not always help? I always think about a clinician misidentifying abuse and neglect, which is harmful and painful, and it's a catastrophe for a family. But a clinician may miss one or two. An AI tool may miss thousands or misidentify thousands, and that is super problematic. And we need to think about that from a social work angle. So, I really advocate for social work scientists to engage with ChatGPT, but do it with care and caution. You have to be careful, and we have to be careful for ourselves, but also for our communities. The profession of social work needs to formulate ethical guidelines for use of AI tools in social work science while ensuring human rights. And I think that's the most important thing. We have to think about these things. We have to develop our own ethical guidelines. We have to be in the table with data scientists and computer scientists and health informatics and tech. We have to be in those tables to advocate for ethics, but also advocate for marginalized communities that are impacted, and a lot of time negatively impacted by AI and technology, and also potentially ChatGPT. So thank you. And now I will be happy to answer questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Landau, for your talk. It's super interesting to, see somebody think through this stuff, which I think has been on a lot of our minds, and to hear all of your kind of use cases and the rigorous thinking that you're doing has been great. So we do have a few questions in the Q&A right now. If other folks want to drop those in, I'm gonna just start from the top in the interest of fairness, if things seem to kind of go together, maybe I'll combine some questions. But so the first question is by anonymous attendee who tested ChatGPT with a small data set and noticed that it was incorrect with a simple question when this person asked them to ask ChatGPT to take the mode of a data set. They're understandably nervous about trusting, and so you spoke to inaccuracies and needing to do some checks. So I'm wondering if you have some kind of tangible or concrete ideas for somebody like this in terms of how to know if they're sort of it's using their data correctly and all of that.
So it's a good question. It's hard to know, but I think when we do research before starting with ChatGPT, I would go to the traditional way of doing research, is getting involved in the literature, understanding the main ideas around the literature, around the data sets. And a lot of times while using ChatGPT, you could fine tune it, meaning you could be more specific around the questions, not try to really define the question in a way that may help, but for sure it could be incorrect. And that's one of the challenges right now. And we have to be careful with that.
Yeah, thank you. And so kind of along similar lines, Vicky and Kimberly asked a couple of related questions where Vicky wants to know your perspective on AI services for therapists recording therapeutic session, transcribing, the sort of maybe the pros and cons of that. I know you talked about contexts, and then Kimberly is kind of asking, could AI sort of be used to mitigate potentially bad outcomes from these kinds of uses of technology?
Yep. Yes, it's concerning, and we have to really check the ethical guidelines of these companies. How do they save the data? If they save the data, we are also concerned about putting in sensitive data within ChatGPT. We do not know where is it going, how is it used. Is it used to develop further the algorithm? It's something that we still are not aware of, but it's something that we can check. And what's happening right now, I have colleagues developing their own ChatGPT that they have control, and that's us collaborating with data scientists and computer scientists to develop these tools for our own usage, and that may be helpful as well.
Thank you. And we also have a comment from a clinician, from Dr. Dion Mahaffey, saying that they are a software developer of 30 years of therapists, and some clients haven't been comfortable with recorded sessions, but they built a platform to take shorthand notes, generate professional narrative note in a clinical tone. So that's somebody's kind of direct experience with using similar methods at this point. Anonymous attendee noted that ChatGPT now has access to the internet, and I think that was in response to maybe your comment about not being up to date with sort of current policy. And so I'm wondering if you have thoughts on just the developments in the model and bringing on new features, specifically being able to access the internet.
So I checked it today, and I also heard that it's getting current access from the internet. I checked it today, and I still got a response of the 2020 or 2021 response that it usually gives out. I don't know. It's there. I know ChatGPT 4 has internet access to current data and current internet, and so that's one thing. But it's not free. It's and I think it should be updated. Like, I think it should be. It's such a strong tool and could be so beneficial to us and to our clients. And if it's free, and accessible, that could be amazing.
Thanks, Aviv. And we have a question from Sherry Johnson, who's asking if you can provide examples of how you have literally used ChatGPT in a social service setting, or maybe if you know of other folks that have.
So I haven't been for the past 4 years. I haven't been in a practitioner social worker. So I unfortunately no, but I could imagine the use of ChatGPT in welfare. I could imagine it as a resource for advocacy, for translating legal issues, or even I know in hospitals they use it, like clinicians use ChatGPT to better describe medical issues to their patients. And so I could imagine social workers in the field using ChatGPT to better communicate with their clients, if that helps.
Thanks. And yeah, and we had the one sort of participant mentioning a specific use case, and definitely interested if others want to share experiences that of their own, that would be great too. But we have a message from Daniel Dresden, sorry if I got that wrong. Basically, they've tested ChatGPT, noticed that dates references can be incorrect. The data sources are limited to 2021. How would you suggest improving ChatGPT's reliability as a tool to brainstorm research? And then they noted that they're also using it as sort of a grammatical proofreader, and how can we continue to enhance its reliability to that end also?
So first of all, yes, it's known that it's not giving correct citations. It's on Twitter, there's a few LLMs experts that are discussing that and providing resources of additional tools that may be helpful in that prospect of academia and ChatGPT or similar ChatGPT AI tools. So there is a development currently of new tools and innovative tools that are more research in their agenda, and I assume we should wait. And it's one of the things that we're concerned about right now is like how to develop these prompts in a better way. Currently, I'm working on a tool that will, its initial thoughts about social welfare data and how it could assist clinicians to better understand child abuse and neglect in state, counties, and across the US based on the welfare data that we have access to. And we're hoping that it could help us better understand the data, but also help the clients better understand the data, and so we could promote advocacy around that field, and for families to better understand the resources that they have in the community. But it's also working in interdisciplinary groups, such as your center and our lab is working with a computer scientist, asking these questions, asking what are the options that we have. It's beyond the social work field. It has to be a joint. It has to be joint collaboration with our technological friends in the development of these tools, and how do we use them. But I think that's important for us as social workers to be in these discussions and to raise the questions and to develop these research agendas together with the data scientists.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me to think about this in terms of like this is just such a new, area where there's going to be continued development and just the importance of posing these things as questions and then bringing our social work perspective to facilitate kind of positive development and sort of helpful welfare, uh, improving development. And to that end, Annette Loy posted kind of a use case where she's currently a doctoral student in Ireland, using harnessing a project harnessing ChatGPT for information seeking for young adults leaving care. And she anticipates that it'll be used, or they anticipate that it'll be used for issues that are difficult to address with a caseworker: sexual health, racism, etc. But they're curious to find out more, right? And so having this, just this attitude of curiosity and humility and saying like, okay, this is sort of my assumption, but let's actually test these ideas.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should test it. We should expand our knowledge on these tools, and maybe implement it at one point. But we also have to think about the ethics and see that we have the people that are checking these tools are diverse and come from different communities, so they could provide a large set of concepts and perspectives to better develop these tools for marginalized communities.
Yep. Yeah, that's very well said. There's a kind of a lull in the questions. I have one that I was thinking about since when you started, and you noted a lot of really interesting sort of areas where ChatGPT and LLMs could be useful in terms of social work science and social welfare practice. And I'm wondering if any of those were sort of surprising to you in terms of like, oh wow, I hadn't imagined this one, and maybe if you have sort of a example of how that realization came about and kind of the process of doing research and practicing.
So one of the things that I'm currently working on is reimagining medical documentation. And I'm working with a group of health informatics and computer scientists to rethink how medical documentation is communicated with family and their children. And what we're aiming to see, and we've played a bit about, like, can ChatGPT help navigate, translate in a better way, in a more understandable way, the medical documentation. And we've seen that it's doing okay. It's not best. We have to fine tune it. And I think next step is we're going to play around with it, see if it can communicate medical documentation also for children to understand their medical situation. So that's things that I'm excited of, and to work with people in the development of these tools using ChatGPT and expanding the options of ChatGPT.
Awesome. That's a really cool example. And I see that Dr. Young, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry. For some reason, I can't actually pose a question. So thank you for this talk. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on, particularly in fields like social work. I come out of kind of public health research and kind of community-based approaches. And, it's really important to kind of understand the communities that you are working with and studying, and to do that qualitative work of asking folks like how they feel about certain things. And so I'm wondering where there's a potential tension with my concern is that particularly like students in these fields might turn to ChatGPT and post prompts about, generally speaking, how do the members of these particular communities feel about X, and not do that like hard work. So this kind of, promoting kind of lazy inquiry, I guess. And so I don't know if, in thinking about your own work and kind of how you advise maybe students in social work or whatnot, about advice you might have, or how you think about this.
So I hope that when we send our RAs and ourselves to individual communities and members of the community, they will do the interviews. Because if not, if technology, from my perspective, it could be very beneficial, but it also could cause a lot of pain. And we are in an era of there could be fake news and so on, and therefore there could be fake research. And we have to be careful. And that's one thing that I hope. It's really hard to, eventually, if we're looking at a qualitative interview of 20 participants, I hope that if someone is not trusty about the way they receive the data, we will figure out. But we have, eventually, I trust my students, and that's like I hope I won't have to test or be in a place where I'm that trust will be lost, and because it will be very there are consequences and that. But for instance, what we have been thinking about, what do we do is like task assignments, like in class, which is and people there, we've all been students, and some of us here are students. It's an easy thing to look at the ChatGPT. We as scholars have to figure out how students can utilize ChatGPT for providing better answers, or maybe asking better questions. So I would think about, if we're studying, my assignments from students that I have worked is, what would you ask ChatGPT? And that's like the thought process that we could expand that, but that's like the idea. It's like not what they can read and then get from ChatGPT, but what could they ask ChatGPT? How could they use ChatGPT to aid this specific social problem? And then that's creative thinking.
Yeah,
but with
I like
interviews, I imagine you could ask ChatGPT 1, 2, but then it just, I hope we'll realize it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and that brings up another interesting thing, and I don't mean to hijack, so maybe this is just something to think about, is the literacy that it involves to be able to discern when you as a professor are getting potentially information like in a paper that might be questionable, or just when you're a user, and to try, like, how to not only discern whether the information is correct, accurate, valid, ethical, but also even how to construct your prompts effectively so that that you can do that iterative discernment. I feel like that there's just probably, we should be incorporating kind of training and coursework in graduate schools, like to kind of, I mean, I could benefit from that, because sometimes I look at ChatGPT and I don't even, like, I sit for like 20 minutes just trying to think of like the prompt that I should be asking it, Mm-hmm. So anyway, I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Young. And I see Dr. Rice also has a question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aviv. This has been a really interesting talk, and it's nice to see a bunch of people show up who are interested in this topic. I think one thing that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting, and I just love to hear a little bit more about this, is thinking about using. I had not thought about previously the idea of using ChatGPT to sort of do document translation as a way of empowering groups that might have, who might not have the technical expertise in an area like medical decision making, right? And I think then it raises for me a question of the data sets on which ChatGPT has learned how to speak in the first place, which tend to be more what I would think of as white, middle class, literate, internet text driven. And so then for me, the question becomes, if part of the idea is to try to use this technology to help communities who are marginalized, who may not have that, a command of sort of a certain level of educational literacy, like literacy, there's literacy in that I can read, a text message that comes through, but then there's literacy of, can I understand the content? And I'm wondering, if you've been having discussions with people, or what your thoughts are about how to, in the attempt to use ChatGPT to be an advocate and to empower people, how to balance then the fact that the very technology itself may be filled with some of the bias that is working against those communities in the first place. I mean, there's kind of almost feels like a bit of a catch-22 going on with this kind of thought process. At least that struck me, and I just wanted to see if you thought that there was, how to move forward in that or with this.
So that's a great question. Today we had lunch, and Desmond and I were thinking about that issue. How do we use ChatGPT to provide information to understand African American English that has different nuances? I think what we were thinking about in our lab is research. We have to have as much as diverse scholars and communities involved in development of ChatGPT tools, because then we're again doing this like cycle of of outcomes that may not contribute to marginalized communities, non-English speaking communities, and so on. So when we are thinking about like how to communicate better with families, the medical documentation, we also work with marginalized communities to understand from them before we start with the AI tool, we do the qualitative studies. We work with communities to understand with them what would be more understandable from their perspective. What do they want to see? What do they want to hear? What would be helpful for them as a parent, as a child? And then we could work with our data scientists and think about these issues and how do we make the outcomes of ChatGPT more understandable for the populations that we hope to aid and be with.
Thanks, Aviv. So we have a couple final questions, or at least two in the chat right now. So the Anonymous is familiar with affirmative immigration processes and processes around political asylum and adjustment of status through marriage. But they're wondering if you have any concerns around giving AI power over things like court cases and medical records and kind of in that context, access to the internet.
It's a good question. I think the eventually what I've seen until now developing these tools, at the end, a human being must make the decision. AI can assist, but us as social workers, physicians, and so on, and policymakers, it's us to make the final decision, and that's something that we have to remember at the end of the day. Currently, maybe in 20 years it'll be different, and but currently this technology is new. There is a lot of bias in these technologies, and this is our responsibility to make these decisions.
Yeah, and and to that end, Kimberly asked sort of a similar question, but I wanted to separate them out in case you had specific thoughts on on Anonymous's specific topics. But I imagine you have similar ideas around AI as a diagnostic tool specifically, or do you have anything to kind of add there in terms of AI making mental health diagnoses?
We're using AI as clinical decision support systems, but I think in the clinical decision support system, it's supporting AI is supporting physicians and clinicians. It's up to us to make the decision. So it's similar answer. It could help me identify abuse and neglect. It could help me identify advanced directives and medical documentation around end-of-life decisions. But eventually, we as clinicians have to look at the data and figure it out and make a choice to use the AI tools, or to make our own decisions based on AI tools, or based on different decision making that we have different thoughts.
Yeah, very, very well said. Thank you, Dr. Landau. And I see we're coming up pretty close to the end here, but I'm wondering if Dr. Rice, if you have any sort of additional thoughts, or Dr. Landau, if you want to add anything.
I mean, this is a great opportunity also for collaboration, and think about, if anyone wants to reach out, you could reach out by mail or LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. I'm always open for further conversation and thinking about potential collaboration and thought process. And I would be happy to share my thoughts with in one-on-ones and so on. So, and I answer pretty fast emails. That's try to.
You do better than me, then. I'm impressed that you can answer that. I just wanted to thank you again for coming out and talking. Because I think that this is, especially in the last several months, as sort of the ChatGPT generative AI discussion has really blown up in the kind of in public discourse. It's really great to have you and your colleagues from Safe Lab, who you collaborated with on this, come in and share some of your thoughts about this. I think it's really it's been very thought-provoking, and I encourage folks to take you up on your offer to respond quickly to emails, and so thank you so much, Aviv. It's wonderful to hear you this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Very much appreciated. Thank you. Thanks so much, and thanks everyone for attending.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.